Hi, welcome to this video. It will talk briefly about each of the 4 different transformations that we generally study in geometry in high school. And then I'm going to show some problems where we have to decide what happened to the figure. Did it get reflected, translated, rotated, or dilated? We'll just kind of go through how to process those. The thing about this topic is that it's not so much like memorizing a set way to do things. It's kind of looking, looking at a picture and kind of fitting the facts to what we see, and then deciding which fits the picture. Okay, so the first, transformation means to change. So if we have a figure and we want to transform it, one way to do that is to translate it. Translating something means that you're going to slide it. Again, if you want to pause this and just take these notes down, that's not a bad idea. So we're talking about translations. It means to slide or move something. And when you slide or move something, you're not turning it at the same time or flipping it. You're just strictly moving it up, down, left, or right, or a combination of those. What is the same between your original figure and where the figure lands is the shape is the same, the size is the same, and the orientation is the same. So if you have a triangle that looks like this and you slide it somewhere, that triangle will still have the same orientation. It's not going to turn at all. Another transformation can be reflection, and a reflection is flipping something. And when you flip an object, you keep the shape the same and the size the same, but the orientation is, I wrote flipped 180 degrees, not super pleased with that. I kind of wanted to say that it can become upside down. And the upside down works for a flip that is a vertical flip, but you can also get a flip that's horizontal, so it can flip left to right as well. The 180 degrees, again, I'm not super keen about that because that makes us think we're turning it, but we're turning something upside down or left to right, one or the other. Another type of transformation we can have is rotation, and that is a turn. It could turn 1 degree, it could turn 80 degrees, it could turn 180 degrees. If we turn something 360 degrees, that means that we've turned it all the way around in a circle, and it should land right where it was originally. So that's something to keep in mind, that that's 360 degrees. When you rotate something, the shape stays the same and the size stays the same, but the orientation is different. And then the last transformation, which we won't have any examples of today, to me I feel like they're pretty easy to see, is when you take a figure and you make it shrink or you make it grow. And either of those would be called a dilation. The orientation stays the same and the shape stays the same, but the size changes. Shrinking brings it smaller and growing makes it bigger, obviously. All right, let's get to some problems now. For this first problem, it says, look at this shape. So we're just looking at the top one here. And then we want to compare it to each of the 3 and which one shows a translation. So we know what has to be the same is not just the size, they all have the same size, not just the shape, they all 3 of our answers have the same shape, but the orientation is the same. So just to be able to talk about that a little bit more, if you look at our initial thing, we have a big hefty fat piece at the top with like a little trunk at the bottom. So we're looking for which one of these has that same orientation with the fatness at the top and the trunk at the bottom. That eliminates answer A because that's a completely different orientation. What we want to do is so we've narrowed it down to B and C. And what we want to realize is that the part that has the trunk is on the right-hand side. So if we look at B, the part that has, I'm calling it the trunk, that's actually on the left side. So it does not have the same orientation as the original. So B is now not an answer. Let's just double check C. It's got the fat part at the top, the little trunk thing on the bottom, and what I'm calling like the longer trunk part. The longer side is matches the original orientation of the original figure. So our answer would be C in this case. For our next problem, we are given just a beginning. This would be our pre-image. This would be our image. And they're asking us what has happened. So one of the choices is, do we think it's been reflected? So did it flip from left to right, or did it become upside down? Yes, actually, that is something that happened. What happened is this went up to the top, and this went down to the bottom. So it definitely got reflected. Let's see. Next one. look at this shape. So again, we're just kind of checking out. This is what we call our pre-image. The image that you start with is called the pre-image. And what we're, after you apply the transformation, the final figure is called the image. So we want to decide which one shows a reflection. So we're going to look at our multiple choices A, B, and C, and which one shows that the original figure either got flipped left to right, or that it got flipped upside down. Okay, so if we look at part A, if we look at our choice A, this is definitely flipped, but it also got moved. So it is definitely not a choice. The next one here, the choice B, the orientation is the same, and that is not going to happen with a reflection. So in A, the orientation did change, but it was also moved. It was slid down. B, the orientation is exactly the same as the original, so that is not going to be a reflection. We need to find when the orientation changed. If we look at C, what we can say is that if we look at, it does match a reflection, because if we took the original shape and reflected it over this line, we would end up with that. So our answer for this is going to be C. I think there's one more. Yep. And the last problem, we're looking at the original shape and we're going to compare it to A, B, and C. We're going to figure out which one has a rotation. So we're going to keep the same size, the same shape, but the orientation is going to change. So if we look at A, if we were to rotate this around, we are not going to end up with the little stub piece sticking up there, so it's not going to be A. If we rotate this original thing around, we will have this sort of a thing, something like that, and that is more what we're looking at for part B. So part B is definitely going to be a rotation. If we take a minute just to look at C to compare it, C actually has the exact same orientation as the original. Notice that they're facing the exact same way. And again, in a rotation, you're not going to have the same orientation. So we know that C is not the answer. These problems aren't, they're not great, but I think the best way to attack the problem is just to take each of the multiple choice answers and compare it to the original and just kind of go through the list. Did the orientation change? Did it change in such a way that it shows a reflection or a rotation? So one or the other. And I hope this helped a little bit. Thanks.